Hey, my name is Kelly Kessler. I'm the host of the podcast Rewiring Health, and I'm obsessed with helping you stop feeling burnout, living in pain, and anxious about the future. You see, for years, I felt like I was never good enough. I repeated in my head, when I accomplish this, then I'll finally be happy. And even when I accomplished it, there was always emptiness in my heart. I always put others' needs before my own. Negative thoughts ran wild in my head, and I always struggled to truly feel like I could relax and be present. Well, through my journey of healing, rewiring my brain, regulating my nervous system, and reprogramming my subconscious mind, I have recovered from an eating disorder, I have healed from chronic back pain, and I can truly be present with my two boys and feel that I am living the life I was destined to live with purpose and with joy. And I'm here to guide you along the same journey of healing. Do you struggle with feeling like you need to be perfect? Or maybe you show the world one version of yourself while behind closed doors you feel like a very different version? Then this is the episode for you. In this episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Steve Vincent. Steve Vincent is a poet and spiritual teacher who helps people overcome their challenges and live their dharma. A reclusive apocryphile, Steve's search for himself has stretched from the sands of the Sunshine Coast to the hot springs of New Zealand, the Peruvian Amazon for ayahuasca ceremonies, many an energetic healing online and in person, and long hours alone pondering the meaning of life. Originally a high school teacher, faculty head, and deputy principal, then freelance journalist, copywriter, and writing coach and marketing consultant, Steve Vincent Plummer's journey inward has unlocked the pain of the human experience, which emerge in his words that are said to move women to tears and make men squirm. As a poet and spiritual teacher, he writes under his given names and presents internationally. Steve lives in the Sunshine Coast, and when not writing and leading groups, can be found at one of the beautiful local beaches, communing with Mother Earth or gazing out into the sea. All right, welcome back to another episode of Rewiring Health, and I am excited to be joined by Steve Vincent. So thank you, Steve, for joining me, and I'm excited for this conversation.
Hey, Kelly, thank you, and welcome to all your listeners. Yeah, we'll have a good chat today.
Absolutely. Yes. So I'm going to jump right in. And what I love to hear are people's journeys. Like where did you start and what brought you to where you are today? So do you mind sharing what brought you along this path to what you do today?
Yeah, everything from the day I was born brought me to here today, right? Like I started going really deep within myself probably 15 years ago. I got to the stage in life because we've got 4 kids, we've got a nice home near the beach, and et cetera, et cetera. And so I guess one of the things I realized that more things don't actually make you happy. You can get a bigger house, a bigger boat, a bigger car, a new pair of shoes that you ladies sort of love so much, but at the end of the day, you get the sugar hit from that. And then you look around and you kind of go, well, what now? Do I just need another sugar hit? And so I guess I became quite frustrated by that. And so that it was that thing that probably triggered the journey of looking within and finding out, well, what more is there? What am I missing in life? Because if I reflect on my life, I've had a very nice life, and I have a very nice life. I'm a father of 4 beautiful kids. Like I said, I live near the beach. I have an envious lifestyle, and yet there was just this little, this knocking that's, there's more there. Like what are you doing? Like, why are you not happy? Like, it was just this whole thing. And, and then I started to look deeper, and I reconnected with the written word. I'd written poetry in my teens, and I'd kind of put that away. I went to an all boys school, so that kind of gets beat out of you being a creative type. Right. And I got I got busy with life. We had 4 kids under 5 at one point, and
Oh
people
my
go,
god,
oh, well, that must have been wonderful. No, it was
that's a
horrible.
lot. I only have 2 and I'm like, yeah, it's a
Yeah,
lot.
it was meals and nappies and kids in car and
Mhm.
kids out of car and da 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 da. It was just
Yeah.
hard work, and I think it was only after we came through that period that I really started going, okay, well, I've reached some career goals. I'm a family man, and but where am I in all of this, and why do I feel the way I'm feeling?
Mhm.
And I guess I realized it's not that stuff on the outside of us that's really important. It's the stuff in here. And this is where our power and our freedom comes from. And I started to go down the rabbit hole, I guess.
Yeah.
COVID was an interesting time for me as well. That, like everyone, it caused huge changes, but what it did, it helped me slow down and really go within. And you mentioned my book, it's got
Mhm.
70 odd poems in it, or yeah,
Mhm.
70 something poems in it. And so in that time, that downtime, I just, when
Yeah.
things came to me, I just, I guess, punched them out,
Mhm.
and then collected them and put them in a book to publish for people to reflect on their own journey. So I guess that's the roundabout way of it was a realization, a knowing, um, that like in here is where I need to look. And I did an awful lot of personal development stuff. I've done ayahuasca in the Peruvian Amazon, and lots of energy healing and things like that to peel off the layers.
Mhm.
And I would love to get to a point, Kelly, where I go, well, here I am now. I've arrived.
Mhm.
However, one of the realizations in this journey is that I'm a work in progress, and I have to keep working at myself. And I guess when I think about it, well, I mean, we eat every day,
Mhm.
we take a shower every day. Why would my personal development be any different? And yet we kind of want to do something or one thing and just go, I've
Mhm.
arrived.
Yes.
Oh, I wish it was so. I wish it was so, but it's
I think
not.
we all do.
That's not the human experience. At least
Yeah.
in my experience, that's not the human experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It really is, I think it's almost like that pursuit of happiness. Like we think like, oh, if I just do this, then I'll finally be happy.
Yeah.
Or if I just do this, I'll feel whole. And it really is that constant journey that we take in
Yeah.
evolving. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, we spend so many years of our lives in autopilot. And it
Yes.
is a lot of those times, like you talk about raising your kids, and so many people are busy during those times, and you're trying to take care of everybody else, but you don't look in and take care of yourself in that
Yeah.
moment, and it kind of gets lost in the shuffle. So I think it's so relatable to so many people who are going to listen to this and be like, yes, like that's what I'm experiencing.
Mm.
And I find that a lot of times when there's a big dissonance between like your outside world and what you're feeling inside, that's where a lot of that turmoil comes. And
Yeah.
it's almost like that nudge to be like, okay, start figuring yourself out so that there's less of a gap there.
Yeah,
And
that's a really interesting point. If I could just
yeah,
interject a little bit there.
absolutely.
One of the things I realized in all of this process was that I'd put on a whole lot of masks.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, I'm happy, everything's fine. We'll have a few beers with the buddies, and we'll have friends around, and everything's fine. But
Yeah.
it wasn't, and it wasn't till I think it wasn't till I owned that. It wasn't till I realized that I had to take responsibility for that and not squash it down and put a mask on. That,
Yeah.
hey, everything's fine, I'm miserable. Hey, everything's fine, I'm miserable. Until
Yeah.
I was able to language that and go, yeah, I do feel crappy. I do feel jealous. I do feel frustrated. I do feel angry with where I am. I do feel discontent.
Mhm.
Until I was able to, I guess, almost have the courage to um, and the courage and to be okay
Mhm.
to actually use those words. I'm not happy.
Yeah.
I feel angry. I
Mhm.
feel jealous.
Mhm.
Until I had the courage to actually own that stuff. It just kept driving myself, and that's a very human thing. And the psychologist Carl Jung, that's part of our shadow self, right? And this is what Jung did a lot of work on. We have the two selves, the hey, the bright, shiny side, look at me, Kelly, look how articulate I am. We can have a really good conversation. Then I'm miserable inside,
Mm-hmm.
because there's part of me, a shadow part. And if I could, to imperfectly quote Jung, he said that everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied, if I can remember, the less it is embodied in the individual's consciousness and the individual's life, the blacker and denser it is. And he said, at all accounts, what was it? It forms an unconscious snag thwarting our most well-meant intentions.
Mm.
You think about
Yeah.
those words, it forms an
Powerful.
unconscious snag
Mm-hmm.
thwarting our most well-meant intentions. My well-meant intentions were I wanted to be really happy,
Mm-hmm.
but there was a snag there stopping me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was all the stuff in my shadow that I didn't want to look at. I'm petty, I'm jealous, I'm unkind, I'm all of those things. I'm unhappy, I'm discontent. Push
Yeah.
them down because I don't want to look at it, because it's horrible looking at it. It's horrible to admit that you're discontent and you've got no reason
Yeah.
to, but that's how I feel, and that's
Mm-hmm.
until I was able to really, like I said, really own that. I was just like on this hamster wheel of, yeah, I'm happy, no, I'm not. Yeah, I'm happy, no, I'm not.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And one thing you said, and I love that you said this, is that I had to have the courage to look inside and
Yeah.
realize that this is the true self, because I think so many times people think courage is is being brave and not showing our emotions and holding it all together and not being, real with ourselves and just going through life. Like sometimes people think that's courageous, but really it is so much more courageous to be open and candid and be like, this is the real me. This is how I'm feeling. And, as even if these emotions are not like, they're kind of almost stigmatized in the world, but this is
Yeah.
what's real. And it's so much more courageous to own that. And once you bring awareness in to that, it stops growing. And now
Yeah.
you can work through that. And that's just an amazing part of that process
Yeah.
to becoming a new person.
Yeah, I found it very liberating. I'll just give you a quick example. This
Mhm.
probably happened, I don't know, maybe 4.5 or so years ago. I want to be a nice guy. I want to be a good husband, a good dad, a good provider, all those things that society dictates that we are. And I remember distinctly one morning, my wife and I usually have a coffee out by the water and, chat about our day and what's coming up and stuff. And she said, "Oh, how are you feeling?" And I went, "Yeah, I'm pretty good." And then I went, "I'm sick of saying that." I said, I said, "You know what? I'm not. I actually feel grumpy."
Mhm.
"Why?" I don't know. I don't need a reason. I feel like shit. Just
Mhm.
don't talk to me. And I mean, it sounds really, really weird as a 40-something-year-old man at the time
Mhm.
to not be able to own my stuff, but it's a lifelong pattern
Mhm.
of survival, people pleasing, etc., etc.,
Yeah.
that takes ages to unravel. And it was only in that moment where I was able to go, no, I feel really crappy.
Mhm.
I'm maybe okay with expressing, and I don't want you to fix me. I don't want you to
Mhm.
encourage me. Shut
Yeah.
up. I just feel crap, right? And being able to own that and be okay with that, like
Mhm.
we have said, is a courageous thing, because she could have taken it in new ways. While you're unhappy, do you want a divorce? Like
Mhm.
it could have unraveled
Yeah.
really, really, really quickly, right? And I
Right.
think I think too that we often fear the consequences of things, and that
Mhm.
stops us being honest with ourselves and honest with people around us. But
Mhm.
that moment was a really liberating thing. It was like I finally was able to take a mask off. I know that sounds really, really, gee, man, you're really weird. Like you're a good communicator, but you don't communicate very well, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's a lifelong pattern. I
Mhm.
know I'm not the only one who has learned protective behaviors like that.
Oh,
Mm,
absolutely. Because it's very vulnerable when you say that things are not okay. And it kind of opens up the floodgates of like, okay, now what's going to happen after
yeah,
this? And you really have to trust the company you're with when you are expressing that, because again, it's, you don't necessarily want to be fixed. Like you said, you don't want somebody to come in and swoop you up and make you feel better. It's just, you just want to kind of sit in those emotions and feel them for what they are, rather
yeah,
than suppress them and cover them up or escape from them and kind of remove yourself from that. And it is a huge part of that process. And
mm,
yeah, I think that's amazing how, you talk about that. And I think so many people can relate to that. And I know I can, as a people pleaser too. It's like, you always have to be like, okay, because you're like, well, I don't want to bring everyone's energy down. I'll just kind of, put my needs aside because I don't want to
Yeah.
change how other people are feeling, or I don't want to burden somebody with this, or, it's like all those things that we tell ourselves that like our needs aren't as important as someone else's needs. And that message to ourselves over and over and over again creates that reality that we're not worthy of being real with ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Such
It's
a
so
powerful.
much. And as I delved more into this, another really inspiring author around this is Dr. David Hawkins in his books. And I think it was in Letting Go. I'm just again trying to. He said something like, "There's nothing unique about any of us when it comes to the way we symbolize our emotions." And he said, everybody secretly, I'll get this right, everybody secretly harbors the fear that they are dumb, ugly, unlovable, and a failure.
Mm.
And when I read that, I went, oh, cool. I'm not the only one who feels like that one.
Yeah.
And this is a very, very learned man. Like he's the consciousness scale guy. So he's done an MD, a PhD. He's done so much work in the field of our emotions and how we show up in the world. And so to hear that everybody secretly harbors the fear that they're dumb, unlovable, ugly, a failure, I just went, oh, wow, it is okay to own that, because some days I do feel like a failure. I'm a work in progress every single day. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the other thing too, and this was only a recent revelation for me, is that we often strive, we push that stuff down, that I'm unlovable, ugly, a failure, da 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 da, because we want to show the world our best side, right? And not our shadow side. And I saw a quote that nature is imperfect and impermanent. I thought about that. What does that really mean? And I sent a picture to my email list, I don't know, 6 months or so ago, where I actually saw for the first time, we have this bush in our backyard called a Tibushina jasmine, and it has these beautiful purple flowers. And when they're in bloom, you just look at that and go, wow, that is magnificent. Nature, you are perfect. You are beautiful. And I went up close for the first time ever. And I looked at the individual flowers and I went, oh, hang on a minute. That one's got 4 petals. That's got 5. That one's all bent. That one's sort of got one that's a bit old and fallen. And I went, wow, that's true. Nature is imperfect.
Yeah.
And yet what we do as humans, or at least what I've done as a human, is I've tried to be perfect. And man, that kills me, man. That takes so much energy. And so I think I've learned a lot from nature, that when I try and control things and make them perfect, I become exhausted and frustrated and all of those sorts of things. And the reason for that is I go against the natural order. Nature is imperfect. Nature is impermanent. Nature has its seasons. Nature has its night and its day. It's dark and it's light. It's summer and it's winter.
Yeah.
Why are we as humans any different to that? Yet we try and control things so we only see the good side of things.
It's so
And
true.
that is a form of suffering. And it's the Buddha who said, the root cause of all unhappiness is attachment. And if we're attached only to the bright, shiny side of us, that's all we want to show. Man, that's a hard act to keep up, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, perfectionism is absolutely draining. And when you were speaking, it was just reminding me of a podcast I just listened to, is Ed Milet, and he was talking about comfortable suffering. And this is what so many people do. And it's like, when I listen to them, like, it's so true. We just suffer comfortable. We have a nice house. We have everything that we need. All our needs are taken care of, but yet we're suffering inside. And I definitely think that perfectionist mindset, that we have to be this person that we perceive to be perfect, and it's unobtainable. We'll never get there, but yet we keep striving for that. It's absolutely exhausting. And so I love how you related to nature, because we are part of nature, and yet we dissociate from it in such a way. And it's so unique how we have, I think, because our brain is so complex, that we're able to kind of make it more complicated than it really needs to be. And do you know where some of those subconscious beliefs came from for yourself? Like, where have you kind of been
Yeah.
able to stem them back at all?
Yeah. See, I'm the youngest of six. I grew up in a fairly strict traditional Catholic family. And I'm also an empath, so I feel things deeply. And I didn't work that out till I was in my 40s, right? Hello,
Yeah.
deep dive of
Yeah.
self-discovery, right? Um, if only I'd known this stuff, 30 years ago, life might have been a little bit easier.
At least you did it
I,
now, though, right? Not at
yeah,
80.
yeah, yeah, that's right. And you're never too old, right? You're never
Mhm.
too old to really
Yeah.
find who you are.
Mhm.
And one of the things I realized is that whether it was by design or whether it was my perception or a combination of those things, I realized that to get attention and to get love and to get self-worth, I had to get a certificate or achieve really well, because when I did, oh, come here, little boy, aren't you wonderful? We're so proud of you. That kind of thing. And so I've carried with me this achiever syndrome all my life, where if I achieve something, I've tied that subconsciously, I've tied that to my self-worth.
Mhm.
And so when things are really good, yay, I am worthy. I have high self-worth. But nature is imperfect and impermanent. So what's the opposite of that? When I have times where I haven't achieved or I've missed the mark, what does that mean? My self-worth drops, right? And so life has been very much this kind of roller coaster. And I would encourage everyone to examine, is there some version of that achiever syndrome in your life where you have tied your self-worth to things that you've achieved?
Mhm.
And that's such a load of BS. You are worthy. I am worthy, whether I get the certificate, the pay rise, the promotion, the new car, the new house, whatever it is, whether I get that stuff or not, as a human being, in this 3D world experience, I am worthy, and so are you. And yet so much of my life has been subconsciously, not consciously, but subconsciously on that hamster wheel of that achiever syndrome. Only when I do well do I feel good about myself, and am I worthy?
Yeah, that's such an important point to make, because I know there's so many people that relate to that, and myself included. And I just realized that too in the last, I would say, few years of like, oh my gosh, like I kept going for the next big thing, like the next degree, the next, like, keep achieving. And it's like, yeah, it just, you never felt whole. And
Mhm.
you always felt like it was that short-term worthiness. And it's a really tough place to be in.
Mm.
And when I think too, looking back, like in school, and I don't know how it is, probably very similar in Australia, but it's like you get a grade, and what do? They mark what you got wrong, and that's it. And like,
Yeah,
you did good in class, or you didn't do good. Even you could be like a passionate writer, but yeah, if they could give you a C, and then you think you're a bad writer.
yeah.
And it's just, it is feeding into that. So if you already have that at home, and then you get it at school, and it's like, of course we are brought up to feel a certain way about our worthiness. So
Mm.
yeah, I think it's so crucial. And for our subconscious mind, it dictates 95% of our life. But how did you start changing the dialogue that you have with yourself, that you are worthy even without these achievements, without everything in your life?
Yeah. A lot of it, honestly, was through writing poetry. A lot of that shadow stuff and the layers that I'd carried with me came off when I had the courage to write. It's pretty raw, and I guess the way I write poetry, it's not, it's very direct, masculine kind of, as opposed to a nice, fluffy, flowery kind of thing. And so in doing that and being okay to put down in words, no, I'm not okay, I'm not feeling fine, and owning that was a really important part of the process. But I think on a really simple level, and this is something, well, one, journal your feelings, write them down, own them, get them out. I think that's really important. But even peeling back that more, I saw a couple of months ago, someone, I can't remember who it was, but it really hit me in the gut really strongly. This concept that words are spells. I
Hmm.
went, In other words, the words you say to yourself, the words you say out loud, they have an energy, they have a vibration, and they cast a spell
Hmm.
over your life. And so I'd encourage everyone to monitor the self-talk, you know, to be conscious of and mindful of and aware of what spells are you weaving in your life. You know, when you hear the word spells, you think, oh, witchcraft, oh, let go of that. You know, you're not 5 years old anymore. You know, but words, it's a really interesting concept. Words are spells. How are you spelling your life? You know, and when you think about it, it's so easy for, you know, the egoic part of our mind to, you know, something happens and you go, oh, I really didn't like that. And then something else not so great happens. And pretty soon, you know, my life's crappy. God, I hate where I am. This is just terrible. Well, no, just two small things happen. Yet that narrative of the negative spell can get a really strong energy of its own. So, yeah, I do this every day. I consciously and probably also subconsciously monitor how I'm spelling my world. And by spelling, I mean creating my world with the words that, you know, that I use, because the reality is we are creators of our reality in every moment through the words we think and the words that we say. And, you know, if my life's crappy, if I'm saying that, well, there's a pretty good chance that's going to come true, right? And it takes no more energy to say my life's great or I'm doing really well than it is to say this sucks. It's the same thing. You've just got to be aware of it, right?
It's so true. And I think you just hit the nail on the head, the awareness, because I think so many people are just not aware of it. And it's like, you can catch yourself saying like, was it really the worst day ever? Like, was it, you know, like if when you're saying that, but it's so true that awareness is clutch. And I completely agree. The power of words. I mean, the power of the words with ourselves and the power of the words between people are powerful. And can be either the most uplifting or the most damning thing in your life. So it's absolutely crucial to choose them wisely.
Yeah, I have another quote from Carl Jung here. He said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate."
That's a
Make
good
the
one.
unconscious conscious. It will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Oh, I have this pain, or oh, I'm in this bad situation. I'm fated. I can't do anything about it. Well, what is it? Power in here. What is that is actually directing your life? It's not fate. You know,
so
yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like it makes it passive. It's kind of like a cop out when we think of it being like fate, like, oh, this was going to happen to me anyway. But like, that's just a way to like dismiss yourself from taking control of or taking your own power to create a different life. And such a good quote. It really is, because it's so true. And I think so many people who don't live consciously or are not aware of what they're saying, or even aren't even aware of the subconscious mind and its power, will feel like that this was coming to me regardless of what was going on in my head.
And look, it takes work too. You know, like I said, I think at the start, I'd love to just go, oh, bang, I do that and everything is fine. It's a daily effort, like a shower, like cooking a meal. It is daily work. And I think that's one of the things, and I'm guilty of this as well. It's one of the reasons we are so unconscious, is that it takes effort, right? It takes mental and emotional effort. And it's worth it if you do, but it's so easy to get caught on that hamster wheel of busyness. You know, life is busy. We're bombarded by all sorts of things, social media and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, it takes conscious effort. And I'm certainly not perfect at it by any means, but I'm just conscious of it. And I'm able to, when I see things sort of going off from where I want them to go, I'm able to pull myself back. Sometimes it gets heavy and it's a couple of days after it, but at least I am aware enough to do so. Yeah, I think that that anyone here talking today is really perfect, because the truth, it's far from the truth, right?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. It's like, no matter how aware of you are, there are going to be those things that just happen. And then you're like, oh, I'm going back to my old self. And you kind of have that like freak out moment. And you're like, okay, no, this is just a time. And then, but the beauty is, like you said, you have the tools to get back to that. And it becomes a habit. And it's so true. And our minds are typically directed towards the negative. So it does take a lot of effort to change that and not just let it go back to its baseline every time. So it's
it's a heavy energy too. Like the negativity is the energy. And obviously anything heavy is hard to
Mhm.
lift, right? So
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Do you mind just talking about what do you do on a daily basis so that you can continue to change the dialogue within your head and change your subconscious mind?
Yeah. It's really it's this happened just this morning. It's really interesting. I go and perform poetry at the poetry slams once a month, right? And I was saying to my wife this morning, I said, "Oh, no, I feel like going tonight. I don't know. I'm just not feeling it."
Mhm.
And she said, "Oh, why?" And I said, "I don't know. I just feel a bit heavy." And she said, "How are your morning routines?" And I went, "What do you mean?"
Mhm.
She said, "Well, you know." And when I when I am conscious enough and not too busy, or I stretch in the morning and I meditate for just 5 or 10 minutes, where I sit on a meditation cushion, cross my legs and close my eyes, and I've listened to some music or just be still.
Mhm.
And so that stretching stillness is in hindsight, is a really, really important part of my practice. And we were away for a few days last week, and I've had a couple of things earlier, so I've been out of routine. And I look back and heck, I got away from what worked from it, because it creeps up on you, right?
Mhm.
Um, I got away from what works for me. So I am quite a spiritual kind of guy. So I do I burn my incense or my Palo Santo, or I do card readings for myself. But it's those the practice of being still. It for me is really, really big. And I guess I would challenge all your listeners. When was the last time you just sat with you and your thoughts?
Mhm.
You just be for
Yeah.
5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. I would reckon that I could probably count on one hand the number of times
Mhm.
that you perhaps have done that. I know when in the busyness of life, um, you can get really distracted from you. You look outside of things, but but I'm not unrealistic enough. We have bills to pay, we have work, we have clients, we have all those sorts of things, but we can't lose ourselves. I spent 20 years losing, 30 years losing myself
Mhm.
in all of that.
Yeah.
And yeah, don't wait till you're my age to wake up to that kind of thing. So whatever works for you. For me, there are several things that work for me: journaling, writing poetry, meditating, walking along the beach. I also love walking in the forest, just for 10, 15, 20 minutes. Being in nature, grounding, getting my feet on the earth. I think that is really, really important. And I think too, one of the things to be really careful of is to, when someone says, "Oh yeah, you've got to do this," well, I don't like being told what to do,
Mhm.
and some of that stuff just doesn't work for me. If it works for you, great.
Mhm.
So try different things, and work out what resonates with you. I think, and because when you do that, you're aligning more to your true self, not what
Mhm.
someone says you should do. So I've tried a whole heap of things, and I've used them for a couple of months and then dropped it and move on to something else. But find what it is for you, where you can just be with yourself. Is it waking up 20 minutes earlier and just sitting there and you think, "Oh gosh, this is a waste of time"? So hang on a minute. Is being with you, is spending time with you, a waste of time? Man, that's a horrible thing to say about yourself, right? No. So late at night, early in the morning, middle of the day, I don't know if you work in an office building, take your lunch and go and sit under a tree or whatever it might be, and just be still. Let your thoughts come and go. Um, that's a way of getting to know who you are. And that whole notion, "Oh, I don't have time." Well, make time. If you haven't got an hour, take half an hour, take 10 minutes, take 5 minutes.
Right. Mhm.
And my experience is, when I don't do that, things start to, I get the wobbles.
Mhm.
Energetically, I get the
Yeah.
wobbles, right? So, work out what works for you.
Yeah.
It might be morning, it might be the middle of the day, it might be nighttime, it might be all three of those. I don't know, it might be one of them. But
Yes.
find what it is for you that you can do, that's low cost, no cost,
Mhm.
but you just come back to yourself, and just even feel your power as a human being.
Mhm. Yeah. And I love that because I completely agree. Like when people say, "Oh, you got to do this, this, and this," and you overwhelm yourself and then you do nothing,
Yeah.
or it's just not, doesn't jive with you, that can really backfire tremendously, because then you think, oh, self-care doesn't work, personal development
Yeah.
doesn't work. It's
Yeah.
so true. You have to find what works for you and in what season of life. And it's always evolving. There may be, 10 years from now that might look different for you. And
Mm.
that's okay. And so I love that you brought up that point that you can take all these things, but again, you have to make sure that it's working for you and what your needs are, and learning yourself enough to know that. So that's why I always love to ask people their self-care routine, because maybe for someone who's listening just heard something like, oh, I haven't done that, let me try that, and then it might work tremendously. So thank you for sharing that and what you do.
Yeah.
And
One other thing I would say
yeah,
is that just watch out for your busy mind telling you that it is a waste of time because you've got this to do, this to, when those thoughts will come up, right? You're sitting
yeah.
here for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and your mind's going, oh, I've got to go, got to go and pick up the kids, got to get this, got to do that, da, da, da. Just try and let those things go.
It's so true.
I'll
And I
still be
love,
there.
yeah. And I love your perspective of like, is being with yourself a waste of time? Like, because, and I haven't like thought about that way, but it's so true. Like that's what the message you're telling yourself when you don't give yourself that time. So I love that perspective shift. And it's, especially after we just talked about the power of the words to yourself. Like it's so true with that. I
Yeah.
love that.
Are you not worthy of 10 or 15 minutes to
Yeah.
yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Wow.
Right.
What are you putting over your life if you're not worthy of 10 or 15 minutes just to be? Just
Right.
be.
Mm-hmm. It's so
Yeah.
true. Yeah. Yeah. And especially now it's like, when we have 15 minutes, like, oh, let me scroll on my phone. It's like
Yeah.
that, like you're still keeping your mind going. So the
Yeah.
mind never has a moment to reflect or get into a better energy state or be creative if you don't ever shut it off like that, or calm it to a place of that.
That's right. So when
Yeah.
was the last time? No music, no phone, no TV, no internet, no social media, and you were
Yeah.
just with yourself, or with yourself in nature. When was the last time you did that?
Yeah, it's so true. And I think sometimes, like, I noticed this when I started doing this, but it's when you have that quiet time, it's almost like uncomfortable because you're like, I'm so used to like the norm for me is that I have to be going all the time. So like this feels weird to be just silent
Yes.
or quiet. So like if for anyone who's done that, like that's how it felt for me when I started. I was like, oh, this feels off. Like I should be doing something
I'll
right
tell you,
now.
I felt guilty. I felt
Yeah.
guilty that I
Yeah.
should have been doing something, right? Rather
Right.
than just being with myself.
Mhm.
That's a really big
Yeah.
red flag. Yeah, it was guilt. I should be busy. I should be doing more.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I can totally relate to that. And I'm sure so many people can, because it's like you have so many demands on you. And again, if you're a people pleaser perfectionist, like that's what always trumps everything else. So
Mm,
so true. One
yeah.
other thing I just want to ask you about as far as the spiritual side, because I'm a huge believer in spirituality, and I just love, the energies and learning more about it and trying to like tap into it myself. How does someone who maybe doesn't really is either skeptical or doesn't really know how to get to their more spiritual side, what's something they can do to kind of start tapping into that for themselves?
Being still. I'll go repeat it again. Being
Yeah.
still and listening to the voice in your head. Listening to, and one of the difficult things I've had is discerning between the busy egoic mind, which keeps me in survival mode, and that soft, gentle, but much more powerful and truer heart.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get into that heart space and listen to your heart and not in your mind,
Mm-hmm.
if you can be here and work out what really matters to you, in those quiet moments, that is a moment of power.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we look at spirituality as in, bang, I'm going to get hit by a flash of lightning and everything will be fine. And my experience is not that. My experience is learning about self, shedding those layers of conditioning, the layers of expectation, the layers of how we think we should show up,
Mm-hmm.
and opening the heart space. And whatever that, I think a big part of that is creativity. Now, whatever that means to you, I always thought I wasn't overly creative, but I'm a writer, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm not very musical, but I now play some drums. So whatever is creative for you, I think that helps unlocking what it is, whether it's painting, whether it's drawing, whether it's singing, whether it's writing poetry, whether it's writing a story, whether it's getting an instrument and tapping something out, whether it's building a sandcastle, whatever is creative for you is a way to tap into who you really are, because there are no rules per se of creativity, and whatever you create comes from here. If you are quiet enough and comfortable enough with that, it will come from here, not necessarily from here. And so if you can let yourself go to dance, to sing, to play, to walk, to be still, to write, to draw, to whatever that is, that creativity is a really important part. And I think it's a gateway to spirituality. I really
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that creativity is that higher energy level too. So it's, you're tapping into that. And just, I love how you talked about how it's just literally is just as simple as sitting quietly with yourself to get into that spiritual side. Because I do agree. I think a lot of people think that spirituality is to be like this overarching, like, oh, I hit the switch, now I'm in a spiritual land. And
Yes,
it's not that. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
It is that daily life, just allowing ourselves to listen to that inner voice that is kind and gentle and caring, and not listen to that voice that's telling us everything is wrong with us. So
Yeah.
I just love
one is powerful. The other keeps you in fear, right? It keeps you frantic
100%.
and in fear.
Mhm.
And I think even just the practice of discerning those two is part of a spiritual practice.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. And it is that ego, and then our authentic self, and the ego is very loud and obnoxious, and we hear it a lot, but it is so true. It's that effort to learn and get stronger at picking up which voice are we listening to in our head, because it often feels like an argument between two voices, so yeah, allowing that quieter voice to have a stronger presence is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, and because we all know the rusty hinge gets the oil, or the kid that screams the loudest gets the ice cream first, or whatever it is. That's just, and so is your inner child that's screaming at you to hurry up, get busy, get the work done, da 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 da. Is that where are you with being able to discern those two?
Yeah. It's a great analogy too, because again, it just makes it like, it simplifies it. Because I think sometimes when we're in our heads, like you can't process that. And so when you think about it as if it were that child, and be like, oh, it's just that kid again. Okay. Like, and then it's so true to use that analogy. It makes it much more palpable, I feel like.
Yeah,
So,
totally. And I think the other thing I would say, Kelly, is remember, nature is imperfect. I mean, so be easy, go easy on yourself. It's progress, not perfection. There has been a war within me for a long time, because we are encouraged to be disciplined, to show up and be disciplined. And I'm not saying that's not important. You have to do that, but you're also a human being that is imperfect. And just cut yourself some slack occasionally. Just don't make sure your slack isn't 6 months long kind of thing, but you are imperfect. Why? Because you're part of nature, and nature is imperfect.
Yes, that is beautiful. And I love that, because especially for anyone who's a perfectionist, just hearing that is so validating, because you may have never been told that, or you haven't really taken it to heart. And to give yourself grace is the best gift you can give yourself, honestly. And just not going so hard on yourself if you are off one day. And again, just like what you said, I couldn't agree more. So thank you for that.
And if you have trouble remembering that, go and have a look at a tree. Go and have a look at the knots, or go and look at a bunch of flowers, and literally just sit there and stare at them and look at them. And that's a nice little me time thing too, right? You're just connecting with nature and going, oh yeah, that one, that petal is all bent, isn't it? That stem is a little bit crooked, but gee, it's still beautiful.
Oh my gosh, so true. And as you're saying that, we have an apple tree in our backyard, and we call it our tree of resilience. And if you look at the trunk, the half of the trunk is gone. It's like a C-shaped trunk. And it's just starting to bloom right now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's still alive. But it's so true that if you look at this thing, it's like the raggedy apple tree. But when we were building our house, we're like, don't take it down, because it's perfect. And it represents what we felt we were. And it is so true. It's completely imperfect, but yet it's beautiful. So I love that example.
Yeah.
that you give. And there's trees everywhere for reminders. So no better
Yes.
way to do it than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Go and look at something in nature, right? Something that nature has produced that we haven't modified in any way, and just, oh heck, I didn't really look at it. I've never really looked at it like that. Oh, there is that thing and that thing and that thing. Touch it, feel it, connect with it.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that. Because it's such a simple thing, but it's so powerful. And I love that. And it's something you can do. And it's something that's all around you for those visual cues to remind yourself of that. So I love that. Or
And if you're religious, well, there's God there in that thing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. It's
Go and
however.
connect with God via that.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And for anyone who wanted to connect with you, how could they find you? And just if you want to talk about your book too, as well, just what that includes and who that's for.
Yeah. So I'll start with the book called Finding You. You can see the subhead there is Poems and Reflections for the Journey into Your Shadow Self. It's available on Amazon, Booktopia, Goodreads, all of those places that you get it. And the way I wrote the book was I wrote my you can see this is what I intended. You'd have little dog ears and things. Yeah. But how I wrote the book, I wrote the poem, then I wrote my reflections or explaining why I wrote it. And one of the reasons for that, poetry can be quite open and ambiguous. And one of the things I find is now, was that really about a tree, or is that about the root of all evil, when you're reading a poem? And so I've given people my reflections on why I wrote that. And then to help that journey within, there's some prompts and some space to write your own reflections. And so it's intended as a guide, not in any particular order, but to help you go and find who you are and where you are, and what really makes you you, and find those different parts. So that's the book. You can get that, like I said, on all of those channels, Amazon, Goodreads, etc. If you want to connect with me, you can go to stevevincentonline.com. You can download one of my favorite poems called She'll Be Okay. And that's the story of a friend of mine in her 70s, not finding out that her daughter had postpartum depression after the birth of one of her children, and the realization that she was so busy and caught up in her life, and the kid was always going to be okay because they were very capable. And she never saw that, and the heartbreak that caused her. And so the poem tells a story of, well, she'll be okay. She's capable. She's okay. You can download that. It's a moving, real story of two people's lives.
Yeah, I love that, and I love that it's a real person that you wrote that about too. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Or you can connect with me on Instagram, Steve Vincent _ It's got to be a double underscore though.
Great. And I'll put all that in the show notes too for anyone who's listening. So that way it's just easier to connect with you. And thank you so much, Steve. I really love this conversation. It's so relatable in so many ways. And hopefully for anyone who's listening, if you just take just one thing out of this, you're going to be setting yourself up for a better life and trajectory. So thank you for sharing your path and sharing all this information for people to kind of take and move into their life.
Yeah, pleasure, Kelly. And just remember, you're worth it. You're worth the time.
Absolutely. I honestly, that's the biggest thing you can take away, is that you are worth it, and to move forward in that way. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you for spending your precious time to listen to this episode of Rewiring Health. My mission is to inspire hope and healing through science-backed practices. If you found value in this, please share with 3 people and leave a review. By doing so, this message can be spread to those who need to hear it most. Also, to get updates on the most recent episodes, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for being part of this community, and I am forever grateful for you.